I went to the local amusement park with my best friend Emily, and she vanished that night. I was blamed until I discovered the park is a front for a network that kidnaps and brainwashes people. I rescued her, but she's not the same, and now I'm trying to expose the truth before they come for her. Me, I don't really know how to start this without sounding like some crazy conspiracy theorist or a wannabe horror writer, but what I'm about to share is real. It happened to me, to someone I cared about, and others who never made it back. I've kept this to myself for years because no one would believe me. Hell, even the police looked at me like I was the monster when it all went down. If you're reading this, you've probably seen the posts or old news stories about the disappearances in my hometown. Most people think it's just one of those unsolved mysteries, a string of bad luck. Maybe some crime ring that moved on and left no trace. But the truth is darker than any of those half-baked theories. And I can't keep my mouth shut anymore. This isn't a story about ghosts, or demons, or any kind of supernatural crap. The horror here is man-made. It's about greed, cruelty, and how some people will turn a place of joy, a damn amusement park, into a hunting ground. It's about how I lost someone I loved, how I got blamed for it, and how I found out what really happens when people vanish without a trace. I guess I'll start at the beginning, because you need to understand what this place was like before everything went to hell. If you grew up in a small town like mine, you know the kind of magic an amusement park can have. We didn't have much, just one main street, a few diners, and a lot of old buildings nobody cared to renovate. So, when Bright Valley Amusement Park opened, it felt like a miracle. It wasn't some huge Disney-type deal, but it had enough rides to make it the #1 hangout spot for everyone under 30. Roller coasters that screamed like they were about to fall apart, a haunted house attraction that smelled of fake fog and burnt plastic, spinning teacups, and the classic Ferris wheel that lit up the whole town at night. From the outside, it was everything you'd expect. Kids running around with cotton candy, families snapping photos, couples holding hands. But even when I was younger, something about that place felt off. I can't explain it. Maybe it was the way the employees never smiled with their eyes, like they were wearing masks. Or how certain areas of the park were always under renovation, blocked off with black tarps and warning signs even when the rest of the park was buzzing. People used to joke about it, saying the park was haunted, or that the owner was some kind of ex-mobster laundering money. Nobody actually thought it was true. We all laughed, and we all kept going back anyway. Then there's Emily. Emily was everything to me. Not my girlfriend, not exactly, but the kind of person who feels like home. We'd been inseparable since middle school. She was one of those people who glowed. You know what I mean? The kind of girl who made everyone feel seen and heard. We'd stay up late, talking about leaving this dead-end town, making stupid plans about road trips and city. Lights. The thing is, Emily's family hated me. Not in the casual parents don't like their kids' friend way. I mean, they hated me. I don't come from money. My dad was an alcoholic who walked out when I was 10, and my mom worked double shifts just to keep us fed. I was the weird kid with ripped jeans and hand-me-downs, the one who liked creepy stories and hung out behind the school with a sketchbook. Emily's parents, the Harrisons, were old money, perfect house, perfect cars, perfect smiles that never quite reached their eyes. They saw me as some dirty stray dog following their daughter around. I once heard her mom call me that freak when she thought I couldn't hear. Emily never cared, though. She stood up for me every time. I wish I could erase that day from my memory, but it's burned into me like a scar. It was late summer, one of those warm evenings where the air feels heavy and alive. Emily and I decided to hit the amusement park one last time before school started again. We were both restless, both tired of pretending we were happy in that suffocating little town. The park was packed, as usual. Neon lights flickered, music blared from cheap speakers, and the smell of popcorn mixed with gasoline from the rides. We wandered around, talked about nothing and everything. I remember she wore this red hoodie that was too big for her, with the sleeves rolled up so her bracelets clinked when she moved. At some point, we went into the haunted house. It was one of her favorites, even though I always found it kind of lame. Rubber bats, skeleton animatronics, fake blood that smelled like sugar. But halfway through, something weird happened. The lights flickered like they were about to go out, and for a split second, I swear I saw someone standing behind one of the curtains. Not an actor, not part of the ride, just watching us. When we got out, I brushed it off. Emily laughed at me, said I was paranoid. But then we noticed something strange. A group of employees standing near one of the blocked-off areas, whispering and staring at us. I told Emily I didn't like it, that maybe we should leave. She rolled her eyes and dragged me toward the Ferris wheel. That was the last time I saw her. It all happened so fast. 1 minute, she was right next to me, laughing as we tried to win some stupid stuffed animal in a rigged carnival game. The next minute, she was gone. I don't know if you've ever lost sight of someone in a crowd, but your brain goes through stages: confusion, panic, denial. I started calling her name, running around like a maniac, checking every corner. The employees gave me blank stares, acting like they didn't understand what I was saying. I ran back to the haunted house thinking maybe she went there again as a joke. Nothing. Then to the Ferris wheel, the arcade, every damn ride. She was just gone. I went to security, but they brushed me off, saying she probably left early or was hiding somewhere. They wouldn't even check the cameras right away. I called her phone over and over, no answer. By the time I called her parents, I was already shaking. You can probably guess what happened next. Emily's parents blamed me. Of course they did, when the cops showed up. They looked at me like I was the suspect from minute one. Boyfriend, they asked. No. Argument, no. Did she seem upset? No. Didn't matter. I was the last person seen with her. I didn't have an alibi. Because who the hell needs an alibi when you're just hanging out at a park? The Harrisons tore me apart in every interview. They called me unstable, said I had an obsession with Emily. They brought up every little thing I'd done wrong since I was 13. I can still remember sitting in that interrogation room while a cop asked me, over and over, Where is she? What did you do to her? Was hell. I didn't do it. I never hurt Emily. But for years, I couldn't prove what really happened. I had nothing until I found something I wasn't supposed to find. This is where things get complicated and dark. I started digging. At first, I just wanted closure. Then I wanted revenge. What I discovered is that Bright Valley Amusement Park was never just an amusement park. It was a cover, a front for something much bigger, much uglier, and I'm pretty sure Emily wasn't the first person to go missing there. I remember the weeks after Emily's disappearance like a blur of flashing lights, sirens, and whispered accusations. People I know my whole life crossed the street when they saw me. Parents pulled their kids closer, as if I was contagious. It didn't matter that the police never had any evidence my name was forever tied to hers. In the worst way, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her red hoodie disappearing into that crowd, her laughter echoing, and then cutting off like someone had muted the world. I kept replaying every second of that night, wondering what I missed. What did I not see? What did I ignore? There was one thing I couldn't stop thinking about. Those employees. When I told the police about the strange group of workers near the blocked-off area, they brushed it off. They said employees always had backstage areas to manage rides or store equipment. But there was something wrong about the way they looked at us, like they were studying us. Noticing us, I started paying attention to the park in ways I hadn't before. I dug up old news articles, old Facebook posts, even small-town rumors on forums no one uses anymore. There were patterns I couldn't unsee every couple of years. Someone went missing near that park. It was never directly tied to the park itself. People would disappear in parking lots, or nearby motels, or after late-night events. The cops always chalked it up to runaways or random crimes. But I started to see connections. There was this guy, one of Emily's old classmates, who went missing 2 summers before. I remembered his face on the missing posters that hung at the gas station. Then I found a blog post from a woman who claimed her sister vanished. After working 1 season at Bright Valley, no one believed her either. The deeper I dug, the stranger it got. There were whispers about the park's owner, a man named Harold Vance. Nobody saw him in public, supposedly. He lived in some big estate outside of town and only came around when something went wrong. People said he had ties to old families out east, rich people with more money than God. The kind of money that can erase problems with a single phone call. Then there were the employees. I found old photos of the park on social media, and I started noticing the same faces year after year. Some of them never seemed to age. I'm not talking about vampires or any supernatural shit, just that they looked frozen. Like they weren't really living, just existing. The more I thought about that night, the more I remembered small, unsettling details. Like the moment Emily tugged me toward the Ferris wheel. I saw one of the workers standing nearby, wearing a standard uniform, a red polo shirt and black hat, but his eyes were wrong, glassy, like a shark's. He didn't blink. He didn't even look at Emily, but I swear he was waiting for her to walk past. I remember telling her I didn't feel right. I remember her laughing, brushing it off, like I was just being paranoid, and maybe I was. But then she was gone. I went back to the park a few days later. Even though I knew everyone was watching me, the cops had already done their investigation, which meant they spent about 3 hours looking around, asking a few employees the same king questions, and then calling it a day. But I knew I'd missed something. When I got there, I noticed that one of the under-renovation areas was still blocked off, covered with a black tarp and a sign that said nitrogen monoxide entry maintenance only. It was the same area I'd seen that group of employees standing near the night Emily vanished. I don't know what I was expecting, but I snuck around the side and found a gap in the fencing. Inside, it didn't look like a ride being repaired. There were no tools, no ride parts, just a single metal door built into the wall of the funhouse. The paint around it chipped and scratched like someone had tried to claw their way out. I swear I heard something from the other side of that door. A faint scraping sound, a voice. I couldn't tell. That's when a hand landed on my shoulder. I spun around and one of the employees was standing there. A tall guy with that same empty expression. He didn't say a word. He just stared at me until I stepped back through the fence. It wasn't aggressive, but it was enough to tell me, don't come back here for the next few months. I couldn't stop obsessing. I started driving by the park at night just to watch. And that's when I noticed the truck stopped big, a marked delivery. Trucks would pull into the back lot around 2 or 3 in the morning. Sometimes they'd leave empty. Sometimes they'd leave with crates. No logos, no shipping labels. Just black trucks with tinted windows. I don't want to sound crazy, but I started to think the park wasn't just a place for families to have fun. It was a front, some kind of operation, something criminal. And whatever it was, Emily had gotten caught up in it. I didn't have proof, just my gut, just this heavy, crushing feeling that she was still out there somewhere, but not as the Emily I knew. One night, maybe 2 months after she disappeared, I saw something that confirmed my worst fears. I parked across the street from the back entrance, hiding behind some old storage units. It was around AM when the trucks rolled in again. I watched as a few workers unloaded what looked like furniture, maybe big wooden crates. Then one of them opened a crate, and I swear on my life, I saw a hand fall out, a human hand. The worker slammed the crate shut, looking around, but he didn't seem shocked or scared. He acted like it was just part of the job. I wanted to call the cops, but who would believe me? I was the prime suspect, remember? The guy everyone already thought was guilty. If I called them, they'd probably just throw me back in that interrogation room. So I started documenting everything. Myself, photos, notes, times, dates. I started a folder on my laptop, filling it with every piece of information I could find about the park, the trucks, and the employees. It was around this time that someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was touched, except for my laptop. It was sitting open on my desk, with the folder I'd been working on completely erased. That was when I knew they were watching me. After that break-in, I stopped sleeping altogether. Every sound at night felt like someone creeping up my stairs. Every car that slowed down near my building made my skin crawl. I'd lock and unlock the door over and over just to make sure it was really secure, but the truth was, if these people wanted to get to me, they already had. They'd been inside my home staring at the same files I'd been piecing together. They knew I was getting too close. I tried to let it go for a while, but I couldn't. Not when Emily's face kept appearing in my dreams, staring at me from behind some dirty glass wall. Mouthing the words "help me," I decided I had nothing left to lose. If they were already watching me, then screw it, I was going to find out what was behind that metal door. I spent a week planning. I studied the park's layout from old maps I found online. There was a service road behind the haunted house, a route used by staff to bring in supplies. It was gated, but I'd seen employees come and go late at night. I figured if I timed it right, I could slip in unnoticed on a Friday night, around 2 a.m. I parked my car about a mile away and walked through the woods. The park was quiet, but not dead. There were still lights on, faint music playing somewhere in the distance. It felt surreal, like the place had faces, the bright, cheerful one everyone knew, and this dark, hollow mask it wore at night. I reached the fence near the haunted house and found the same gap I'd used before. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought someone would hear it. I ducked through, hugging the shadows, and crept to that metal door. It was unlocked. I didn't even have time to process what that meant before I pulled it open and slipped inside. The hallway was narrow and smelled like rust and bleach. It didn't look like part of a ride, it looked industrial, functional. I followed the sound of faint humming, like machines running somewhere below. The first room I found was filled with uniforms, not just employee uniforms, but regular clothes. 2 t-shirts, jeans, shoes, all different sizes, all tagged with numbers instead of names. I felt my stomach drop. I pushed deeper into the building, past storage rooms and maintenance areas, until I found a staircase leading down. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. I had to know. Downstairs, the air was colder. The walls were lined with pipes and flickering fluorescent lights. I heard voices, faint but distinct. I followed them to a room at the end of the hall. Through the narrow window of a heavy metal door, I saw something that still haunts me when I close my eyes. There were people inside, maybe 6 or 7, all sitting on metal chairs, perfectly still. Their heads were tilted back, eyes open but blank, like they weren't fully awake. A man in a lab coat moved between them, speaking softly and adjusting something on the helmets. Strapped to their heads, helmets, like VR headsets, but bigger, with wires snaking out and connecting to a console against the wall. I stood there frozen, watching as one of the people, a woman, maybe in her 20s, suddenly twitched and started to scream. The man in the coat calmly turned a dial and the screaming stopped. Her eyes went blank again. I don't know how long I stood there before I realized one of the chairs was empty, and on the floor beside it was a red hoodie, Emily's hoodie. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I wanted to burst through that door and rip those helmets off their heads, but I knew I wouldn't stand a chance. There were at least 3 other employees standing in the room, watching, and I had no idea if Emily was even in there somewhere, hidden away in another part of this underground maze. I forced myself to back away. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep quiet. I had to get out of there, had to think, but I wasn't careful enough. I was halfway back up the stairs when I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, fast. I bolted, sprinting through the hallway, shoving open doors at random. I found myself in another maintenance corridor, running blind. Someone yelled behind me, but I didn't look back. By the time I made it outside, my lungs were on fire. I didn't stop running until I hit the woods, scraping my hands and knees on branches and rocks. When I finally got to my car, I sat there for a long time, trying to convince myself I hadn't gone insane. But the image of those blank-eyed people, the red hoodie, it was all too real. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about what I'd seen, thinking about how the hell I was going to save Emily, or if she was even the same person anymore. Over the next few days, I tried to tell someone, anyone. I went to the cops again, but they looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Brainwashing. One of them scoffed. Are you high? The Harrisons told me to never contact them again. They were convinced I was just trying to make excuses for whatever I'd done. I realized I was alone. That's when I started digging deeper into who Harold Vance really was. I found out the park wasn't just his. It was owned by a network of shell companies, all tied to wealthy families with criminal backgrounds, people who had been accused of human trafficking, money laundering, all kinds of dark shit, but had always slipped through the cracks. And then I stumbled across something worse. I thought I was prepared for anything after what I saw in that underground room. But the deeper I went, the worse it got. At first, it was just rumors and fragments of information, old articles about people going missing, lawsuits that mysteriously disappeared, workers who quit and never spoke a word about why. But then I found something that made everything real. I was combing through old forum posts, some from 10 or 15 years ago, when I found a thread on a forgotten message board. The topic was, has anyone worked at Bright Valley Amusement Park? Most of the replies were typical kids complaining about bad pay, long shifts, asshole managers. But buried near the bottom was a single reply that made my blood run cold. They're not just running rides down there, they're making people forget who they are. My sister worked there for a summer. She came home, different, like she didn't even know me anymore. Her voice was flat, her eyes were dead. 2 weeks later, she was gone. My parents think she ran away, but I know they took her back. Do not trust them. I clicked the username, but the account had been deleted years ago. No posts. No way to trace who wrote it, but I knew it was true. I'd seen it with my own eyes. I started looking for patterns in the disappearances, ages, dates, anything that might connect them. That's when I realized it wasn't just young people. It was anyone who fit a certain profile, single, alone, or vulnerable. People who wouldn't be missed, or people whose families didn't have the power to fight back. And then I found the list. It wasn't easy. I had to dig through layers of old cache files from a server connected to one of Harold Vance's companies. I almost gave up, but then I found a spreadsheet buried in the data. Names, dates, ages, physical descriptions. Emily's name was there. Next to her name was a note, Stage 2, Conditioning. I can't describe what it felt like to read that. Rage doesn't even cover it. I wanted to burn the whole place down, tear it apart brick by brick until I found her, but I knew I couldn't just storm in there alone. Not with what I'd seen: armed guards, underground facilities, a system built to erase people like they never existed. I became obsessed for weeks. I barely left my apartment. I tracked every vehicle that went in and out of the park. I took pictures, wrote down license plates, even followed some of the workers when they clocked out. Most of them went to this rundown motel on the edge of town. They never stayed long, just went inside for a few hours and left. One night, I followed one of them closely, and he noticed. He stopped in the middle of the road, got out of his car, and stared straight at me. He didn't say a word. He just smiled, that empty, hollow smile. I drove off before he could get closer. But that night I found a note slipped under my door. Stop looking, or you'll end up like her. That was when I realized they knew exactly who I was and exactly what I was doing. I wish I could say I backed off to stay safe. I didn't. The next step was going back inside the park, but this time I had a plan. I waited until a storm rolled in, a heavy summer thunderstorm that made the whole town shake. The park would be closed, but I knew the underground area wouldn't be empty. I broke in through the maintenance entrance, the same way as before. My hands were shaking, but I had a camera this time, along with a cheap voice recorder. I was determined to get proof, something I could shove in the cops' faces so they couldn't ignore me anymore. The underground halls were darker than before, only lit by the flickering emergency lights. I crept back toward the room where I'd seen the helmets and the chairs. It was empty. The chairs were still there, the wires and equipment, but no people. The helmets were lined up on a table, all black and gleaming under the harsh lights. I went closer and saw something I wish I hadn't. There were names scratched into the plastic of the helmets. One of them had Emily carved into the side. I took pictures of everything, shaky, blurry photos, but enough to show someone this wasn't just some ride equipment. That's when I heard the humming again, coming from behind another door. I pushed. It opened slowly, and my stomach dropped. There were more rooms. Some looked like living quarters, tiny, sterile cells with nothing but a bed and a sink. Others looked like classrooms with old TVs, projectors, and chairs bolted to the floor. And one of them, I saw something written on the whiteboard: forget who you were, become who you are meant to be. I don't know why, but those words shook me more than anything else. It felt like I was staring at the blueprint for destroying someone's identity. I was about to leave when I heard a noise behind me, a door slamming shut, then footsteps. I panicked, bolting down the nearest hallway. I could hear voices now, low and angry, echoing off the walls. I ducked into a side room and hid behind a row of lockers, holding my breath as the footsteps got closer. For a second, I thought I saw her. Through a gap in the lockers, I saw a group of workers passing by, and one of them, she looked like Emily. Her hair was shorter, darker, but her walk, the way she held her hands, I swear it was her. I almost called out, but something stopped me. Her face was blank, empty, like the others I'd seen. I knew then that I had to get out before they found me. I waited until the footsteps faded, then slipped back the way I came. By the time I made it to my car, I was shaking so badly I could barely hold the keys. I sat there in the rain for a long time, crying, like I hadn't cried in years, because I realized something that broke me in half. Emily was alive, but Emily wasn't Emily anymore. The night I saw her, if it was really her, I couldn't think about anything else. I kept replaying it in my mind, the way she walked past me, just a few feet away. With that empty look in her eyes, it was like looking at a wax figure of someone you love. She was there, but she wasn't. I spent days arguing with myself. Part of me wanted to just grab my stuff and run, leave this town behind and never look back. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily sitting in that metal chair, her head tilted back under those black helmets, wires running into her skull. If I didn't do something, she was gone forever. I started planning, not just sneaking around this time, but actually getting her out. I didn't have any weapons, didn't have anyone to back me up, but I knew the layout of that underground maze now. I knew which entrances were least guarded, and which corridors were likely empty at night. I spent hours watching the park, sitting in my car with binoculars like some cheap private investigator. I noticed a pattern. Every night around 3 a.m., a shift change happened. A group of employees would leave through the back exit, another would come in. There was maybe a 10-minute window when the place was almost unguarded. That was when I'd make my move. I remember the night I went back. I could barely breathe from the adrenaline. I dressed in black, stuffed a flashlight and camera into my backpack, and wrapped my phone in cloth so the screen wouldn't glow. I slipped through the fence as the rain started. The sound of it hitting the metal rides drowned out my footsteps. My heart was pounding so hard I felt sick, but I kept moving. The maintenance door was unlocked again. It always was. I think they never worried about anyone daring to go inside this time. I didn't go to the empty room with the chairs. I headed deeper, past the classrooms, past the storage rooms. I followed the sound of faint voices and that low mechanical hum. I found her. Emily was sitting in one of the metal chairs, a helmet clamped around her head. Her wrists were strapped to the armrests, and she was trembling like she was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake from. I didn't think. I just ran to her, ripping the straps loose. Her skin was cold and clammy, and when I pulled the helmet off, her eyes were wide and glassy. Emily, I whispered, shaking her shoulders, it's me. We have to go. She blinked slowly, like my words were coming from underwater. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I tried again, louder. It's me. We're getting out of here. She flinched at my voice, like she didn't know who I was. But then, just for a second, I saw something behind her eyes, recognition, maybe a spark. I didn't have time to wait for more. I pulled her up, threw her arm over my shoulder, and started moving toward the door. That's when I heard footsteps, not just one person, several. The sound of boots hitting concrete, Voices barking orders. They knew I was there. I dragged Emily through the hallways, trying to retrace my steps, but the maze-like layout of the place worked against me. Every corridor looked the same: gray walls, flickering lights, pipes overhead. Then I heard a voice, low and calm, cutting through the chaos. Put her down and you can leave. I froze. A tall man stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just a black suit that looked clean for this place. His hair was slicked back, his smile sharp and cold. You're making a mistake, he said. She doesn't belong to you anymore. She's been chosen for a better life. My grip on Emily tightened. She's not yours, I spat. I'm taking her home. The man sighed, almost like I disappointed him. You don't understand what we do here. People like her, they're valuable. We give them purpose. We give them new lives. I didn't care what twisted justification he had. I turned and ran out. The chase was a blur. I don't remember every turn I took, but I remember the sound of heavy boots behind me, the flash of flashlights cutting through the dark. At one point, I ducked into a side tunnel and hid behind a stack of crates, holding Emily against me as she shivered and stared blankly at the floor. I could hear them searching, their voices echoing. Find him, don't let him leave. I waited until their footsteps faded, then took a different route I'd spotted on one of my earlier visits, a narrow service tunnel that led to a hatch near the edge of the park. I had to practically carry Emily the last stretch, but somehow, we made it. When I pushed that hatch open and felt the cold night air, I almost collapsed with relief. We didn't stop running until we were back at my car. I shoved Emily into the passenger seat, started the engine, and tore out of there like a bat out of hell. She didn't speak the whole drive. She just stared out the window, eyes wide and unfocused, like she was looking at something I couldn't see. I took her back to my apartment. She sat on the couch, silent, trembling. I tried to talk to her, to get her to remember me, but it was like talking to a wall. She didn't even respond to her own name. That night, I stayed awake watching her, terrified that someone would come to take her back. The next morning, I knew I had to do something. I called the cops again, told them I had found Emily. They didn't believe me at first, not until they came and saw her themselves. The Harrisons showed up, and the look on their faces was strange, relief, yes, but also something colder. Like they didn't want to believe this was their daughter. She didn't recognize them either. The cops took statements, but when I told them about the underground facility, they rolled their eyes. They said I must have been confused, that Emily was probably drugged, disoriented. But I know what I saw, and I know the people who run that place won't stop. Emily stayed with her parents after the police got involved, but nothing was the same. She didn't recognize me. She didn't recognize anyone. The first time I saw her after the rescue, she was sitting on their pristine white sofa, wearing a loose sweater that swallowed her frame. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Her eyes didn't have that spark anymore. They were dull, like polished stones. I tried talking to her, reminding her of the things we used to do, the places we used to hang out. Nothing. When I mentioned the park, she flinched. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, like her whole body was rejecting the memory. Her mom didn't like me being there. She stood behind Emily with her arms crossed, watching me like I was about to break something. Whatever you've done, she said quietly. You've done enough. Just leave her alone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them and tell them this wasn't Emily's fault, that she'd been broken by those people. But what was the point? They didn't believe me. No one did. Over the next few weeks, I tried to stay close, but every time I visited, Emily was worse. She spoke in monotone sentences, like she was reading from a script. She didn't laugh, didn't smile. One day I brought her favorite bracelet, the one she'd left in my car months ago, and she looked at it like she'd never seen it before. Her parents started hinting that I should stop coming around. She needs time, her father said, his voice sharp, and you're not helping. But it wasn't just them. Something else was happening. I started noticing cars following me. Not every day, but enough to make me paranoid. A black SUV would park across from my apartment for hours, engine running, tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Sometimes I'd see a man in a black suit standing across the street, pretending to talk on his phone while watching me. One night, my apartment door was unlocked when I came home. Nothing was taken. A single piece of paper sat on my kitchen counter with 3 words written in black ink. Stay quiet now. I didn't sleep that night. I started keeping a kitchen knife under my pillow, as if that would make a difference if they decided to come for me. I wanted to go back to the park to gather more evidence, but I knew I wouldn't get that lucky. Twice. They'd be expecting me now, and besides, I had Emily to think about. I tried contacting some local reporters, but none of them took me seriously. Underground brainwashing operation in a theme park doesn't exactly sound credible when you're a guy with a criminal-looking record and a history of being accused in a missing person case. But the more I dug into the park's owners, the more connections I found. It wasn't just Harold Vance. There were other names, other companies, a whole chain of shell corporations that stretched across state lines, all linked to hospitality or entertainment businesses. I realized that Bright Valley was just one piece of a much larger machine. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. You want the truth? Meet me behind Denny's at midnight, alone. Normally, I'd ignore something like that, but I couldn't. Not after everything. I went, carrying nothing but my phone and a kitchen knife hidden in my jacket. A woman was waiting in the shadows of the parking lot. She looked rough, eyes bloodshot, skin pale like she hadn't slept in weeks. You don't know me, she said, but I used to work there. She told me things I didn't want to believe. That the park was just a front for an underground trafficking ring. That they didn't just take people, they rewrote them, broke them down with drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture until they were clean slates. Then they sold them to wealthy clients as servants, companions, whatever they wanted. They call it conditioning, she said. You saw the helmets, right? That's just part of it. They use everything sensory. Deprivation, pain, sleep cycles. It's like building a new person from scratch. When I asked about Emily, the woman lowered her gaze. If she's home, she's not really home. You need to understand that. Once they get inside your head, you don't come back the same. Before I could ask more, she left. Just walked off into the night like we'd never spoken. That conversation lit a fire in me. I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The next day, I tried talking to the Harrisons again. I told them what I knew about the conditioning, about the people behind the park. They didn't even let me finish. Leave, her father said, his voice trembling with anger. Don't you dare come back here. Haven't you done enough? They shut the door in my face. Emily, I think she's starting to forget me completely. The last time I saw her, she didn't even make eye contact. She just stared past me like I wasn't there. And maybe I won't be for much longer. The cars are still following me. The same black SUV. Last night, I found another note. This time, taped to my front door. Stop talking, or next time we won't warn you. I don't know how much time I have before they make good on that promise. Maybe I'll vanish too. Just like Emily almost did. But I can't just sit here. That's why I'm writing all of this. Maybe if something happens to me, someone will find this post and keep digging. Maybe someone braver or smarter than me will find a way to stop these monsters. A few nights after I posted the initial details on a small forum, I knew I'd crossed a line. Not even 24 hours later, my apartment door was kicked in at 3 a.m. I woke up to the sound of splintering wood. Instinctively, I rolled out of bed, grabbing the knife from under my pillow. I barely had time to process what was happening before I heard heavy boots pounding on the floor and saw two men in black masks storming into my room. Get him, one of them growled. I bolted through the back door before they could grab me. Barefoot, slicing my foot on broken glass as I ran into the alley behind my building. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. I heard them chasing me, shouting, but I didn't dare look back. I cut through the narrow alleys, vaulting fences, ducking behind trash bins until my lungs burned. It felt like forever before I lost them. I spent the rest of the night crouched, behind a dumpster in the rain, shivering and bleeding, too scared to move. When I finally made it back home at dawn, my place was wrecked. Drawers yanked open, everything thrown to the ground. My laptop was gone, my phone too. That was when I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I grabbed whatever cash I had and checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town. The smell of mold and cigarette burns in the sheets made me nauseous, but it was better than being hunted. For the next few days, I lived like a ghost. No phone, no social media. I paid in cash, stayed inside during the day, and only left at night to get food. But I kept writing. I wrote everything I'd seen, everything I knew. Every scrap of detail about Bright Valley and the people who ran it. If I disappeared, I wanted someone to have the full story. It was on the third night in that motel that I got a knock on my door. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone I was there. I didn't answer at first. The knock came again, louder. It's me, a voice said, a woman's voice. I cracked the door open just enough to see a familiar face. The woman who'd met me behind Denny's. The ex-employee. You're not safe here, she said, pushing her way in. Her hands were trembling. They know where you are. They're not going to stop. I asked her why she was helping me. Why she hadn't just run far away from this nightmare. Because I tried to expose them once, she said, and they took. My sister. Her voice cracked. I don't want what happened to her to happen to anyone else. She told me she had a lead location connected to the park, somewhere outside of town. A place where new recruits were taken during the conditioning process. They move people there before they're sold off. She whispered, if your friend is still alive, that's where she'll be. The next night, we went. The location was an old warehouse, miles from the park, surrounded by fields and dense forest. It looked abandoned from the outside, broken windows, peeling paint, rusted metal doors. We waited until the middle of the night, then slipped in through a side entrance. The inside was nothing like I expected. Rows of cages lined the walls, actual metal cages like you'd see in an animal shelter. Some were empty. Others had personal belongings inside: a shoe, a torn jacket, a cracked phone case. There were no people, but the smell was awful. Sweat, mold, and something sour I didn't want to identify. In the center of the warehouse was a table covered in files. I flipped through them with shaking hands. Names, photos, dates. All the missing people from the last few years, and they're at the bottom of the stack was a picture of Emily. Her hair was shorter now. Her eyes blank in the photo, but it was her. We didn't get long to look. A door slammed behind us, and suddenly the warehouse was filled with blinding lights. I turned to see three men standing in the entrance, all dressed in black. The woman grabbed my arm. Run! We darted through the back, weaving between crates as the men shouted and gave chase. My legs felt like they were on fire, but adrenaline kept me moving. We burst out into the night, sprinting through the field as gunshots cracked. Behind us, I don't know how we made it to the tree line. Somehow, we did. We dove into the forest, hiding under thick brush as flashlights swept past us. By the time we got back to the car, we were both shaking so hard we could barely hold the keys. This isn't just a small operation, the woman said, breathing hard. It's bigger than I thought. They've got law enforcement on their payroll, politicians. If we go to the cops, they'll just hand us over. She looked at me, her face pale, but determined. The only way to fight them is to tell everyone. Put it out there, where they can't bury it. That's when I decided to write everything here. I don't know how long I have. I don't even know if Emily is still in town, or if they've moved her somewhere I can't reach. But I'm not going to stop, even if they come for me, even if I vanish like the others. At least someone will know the truth. If you're reading this, and you live near Bright Valley Amusement Park, stay away. If someone you love goes missing, don't trust the official story. These people are organized, they're rich, they're powerful, but they're not untouchable. After posting my first warnings online, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I'd finally told anyone the truth. Dread because I knew they'd read it too. I imagined the people behind Bright Valley sitting in some boardroom, scrolling through my words, planning how to make me disappear next. The woman, the ex-employee, was right. I couldn't count on the police, and I couldn't stay hidden forever. If I wanted this to end, I had to go back for her. Emily, not just for her, but for every person they'd taken. I couldn't live with myself if I ran while she was still trapped somewhere. Her mind broken and rewritten. We spent days planning, every second filled with a gnawing sense of fear. I didn't tell Emily's parents. They'd call the cops, or worse, warn the wrong people. It was just me and the woman. Her name was Claire. I learned she'd been a low-level staffer years ago, recruited under the promise of good pay and housing. When she discovered the truth, she tried to blow the whistle. Her sister paid the price. Claire knew the park's schedule better than anyone. She'd helped build some of the back-end systems, the hidden tunnels, the layouts no customer ever saw. If I had a shot at getting Emily out, it was with her. We picked a stormy night for our move, hoping the weather would mask our presence. Claire managed to steal a security badge from an old contacted janitor who hated the place, but was too scared to talk. With that badge, we'd have limited access to the underground areas. I can still feel the weight of that night pressing on my chest. The rain came down in sheets, soaking us as we slipped through the fence and made our way toward the back entrance. My shoes squelched with every step, my hands shaking around the flashlight I kept hidden under my jacket. Once inside, the air was cold and damp, the hum of machines echoing through the halls. Claire led the way, her eyes scanning every shadow. We weren't 5 minutes in before we heard voices. Two guards stood near one of the carters, chatting like it was just another night at work. Claire grabbed my arm, motioning for silence, and we ducked into a side room. When they passed, we moved again. The deeper we went, the worse it got. We passed rooms filled with crates and files, the kind of evidence that could ruin them if it ever got out. I snapped photos of everything, shipping labels, documents, even the cages I'd seen before. I wanted proof this time. Then we heard it, a voice, not just any voice. Emily's died. It was faint, muffled, but it was hers. I felt like my heart stopped. We followed the sound to a long hallway lined with heavy doors. Claire swiped the badge on each one, and finally, on the third door, it clicked. Emily was inside. She was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled to her chest, wearing the same loose gray clothes I'd seen on the others. Her hair was matted, her face pale. When she saw me, there was no spark of recognition. She just stared like I was a stranger. Emily, I whispered, kneeling in front of her. It's me. I'm here to take you home. She blinked slowly. Home. Her voice was hoarse, like she hadn't used it in weeks. Yes, I said, my voice cracking. We're leaving right now. Claire watched the hallway while I helped Emily stand. She was weak, leaning heavily against me, but we moved as fast as we could. We were almost out when it happened. The alarms, a deafening siren, blared through the halls, red lights flashing overhead. We'd been spotted. Go, Claire shouted, pulling me toward a side exit. But as we turned the corner, 3 men in black suits blocked our path. It was the man I'd seen before, the one with the slick back hair and shark smile. You never learn, do you? He said, his voice calm even over the blaring siren. You don't get to take what's ours. She's not yours, I yelled, my grip tightening on Emily. His smile widened. She is now. They all are. I don't know how we got out alive. It was chaos. Claire swung a metal pipe she grabbed from somewhere, taking one of the men down. I shoved another into the wall, grabbing his key card. Emily stumbled, but I dragged her along, my entire body running on pure adrenaline. We raced through the tunnels, alarms still screaming, until we found a maintenance hatch that led to the surface. I kicked it open, the night air slamming into my lungs like ice. We didn't stop. We ran through the rain, into the woods, until the park's lights were just a glow behind us. Emily is safe now. Well, as safe as she can be. She's with Claire, at a hidden location, away from her parents, away from the people who want to reclaim her. But she's not the same. Sometimes she screams in her sleep, saying words that don't make sense. Sometimes she stares at me like she's trying to remember, but can't. It kills me. I don't know if she'll ever be the girl I knew Dot is for me. I'm writing this from another motel, far from town. I know they're still looking for me. I can feel it, but I have the files. I have photos, recordings, documents, all the proof I need. I'm going to release everything, all at once, to as many places as I can. Dot, if you're reading this, and you know anything, if you've seen people acting strange after being at Bright Valley, or if someone you love vanished, please speak up, because I'm not sure how much longer I can run.